have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 68, printed in House Report number 115-830, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 996, the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, and a member opposed. Each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you so very much, and I thank again the ranking member and the chairman of this committee. And my amendment is prohibiting the use of appropriated funds to limit museum outreach programs administered by the Smithsonian Institute. Again, for programs like this is to advocate and to create the legislative history of the importance of these programs, and I am glad to have this amendment presented to the Congress at this time. In order to fulfill the Smithsonian's mission, the increase and diffusion of knowledge, the Smithsonian seeks to serve an even greater audience, and this has come about over the years by bringing the Smithsonian to enclaves of communities who otherwise would be deprived of the vast amount of cultural history offered by the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian's outreach program serves millions of Americans, thousands of communities, and hundreds of institutions in all 50 states through loans of objects, traveling exhibitions, and sharing of educational resources via publications, lectures, and presentations, training programs, and websites. Let me say from a personal experience, my predecessor, one of my predecessors, the Honorable Mickey Leland, that many people know, died in an airplane going into an Ethiopian mountain trying to bring food to starving people in Eritrea and Ethiopia. He had introduced the first bill for a museum dealing with slave history. He did not live to see that legislation go forward, but later John Lewis introduced the legislation to create the Smithsonian African American History and Culture Museum. We have it today, and it is a museum that has seen more people attending, and the outreach is crucial. The board members who are so proud to be a part of it, but the Congressional Black Caucus, who was the anchor of passing this legislation. Now we have an outstanding exhibit on Oprah Winfrey, and all are there to see this historic figure and many others. It is important that the Smithsonian, for the Air and Space Museum, and many others have the opportunity to reach out to Americans and let them know of these very special resources, these assets that are here. So this is a very important emphasis to have, and I would like to make sure that we continue to do it robustly so that more Americans can know their history. I'd like to ask my colleagues to support this amendment and reserve my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. For what purpose the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I rise to approve the amendment.
With
I have no objections to the gentlelady's amendment. It was accepted last year's bill by voice vote, and I encourage adoption of the gentlelady's amendment. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas.
Yes, Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left?
2.5 minutes.
Well, excellent. I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Minnesota, the ranking member, and thank her again for her leadership.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank the gentlewoman from Texas for the time, and I'd like to commend the chairman of the subcommittee for accepting this amendment. The chairman and I know the importance of museums and the wealth of knowledge that they share with the American public, and when we have Smithsonian Day at our hearings, when the chairman puts the gavel down, everybody's in attendance to see what the Smithsonian is going to bring to the history lesson that it's going to share with the members of our committee. And we're inspired, just as these museums inspire people of all ages to better understand our world and our place in it. So I'm very pleased that the Smithsonian is going to be able to go forward with its public outreach programs, including exhibitions, programs, and online resources, which anybody can access, and ensures as many Americans as possible can benefit from their vast collections. At the Minnesota Science Museum, we call it Museum in a Box, and I'm glad the Smithsonian is going to continue to do that. With that, I yield back to the
Gentlelady yields. Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas.
Let me thank the gentlelady for really letting us know what a joy the Smithsonian is even in front of the Appropriations Committee. I want to emphasize that the Smithsonian outreach programs increase connections between the institution and targeted audiences, African American, Asian Americans, Latino, Native Americans, and New Americans, and provide kindergarten through college-age music education and outreach opportunities. Mr. Chairman, I failed to say that when we were putting together, once the African American Museum was established, the museum personnel leadership, Dr. Lonnie Bunch, went on the road across America collecting artifacts from African Americans and historic families to put in this museum, real items of slave history and the history of African Americans through the years, through the centuries. And it made the museum a living example of the history of our time here in the United States. And that has been done by the Smithsonian in many different groups. And so I would offer to this article that says, new national data reveals the economic impact of museums is more than double previous estimates. Groundbreaking reports revealing indisputable evidence that museums contribute more to the United States economy than previously thought and have widespread support. I ask my colleagues to support this amendment. Mr. Chairman, I'd like at the appropriate time to put this American Alliance of Museums article in, dated February 13, 2018.
The article will be inserted.
Researchers, another article, researchers suggest reforestation around urban areas to reduce ozone zones, dated September 9, 2014.
Both articles will be inserted, and the gentlelady's time has expired.
Cities and communities in the U.S. losing 36 million trees, am I insert that as well. And I ask my colleagues to support the Jackson Lee amendment.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment